and welcome to the Absolute Recap Biology Edition, where we aim to maximize your understanding and minimize your need for memorization. Each episode will recap content, skills, and test-taking tips to help you succeed in May. I'm your host, Melanie Kingett, and your recap starts now. Hi, and welcome to the Absolute Recap Biology Edition. Today's episode will recap phylogeny. Let's zoom out. We're in Unit 7, Natural Selection, Topic 7.9. Our big idea is evolution. Imagine you and a friend are running a 5K. This particular race has several different pathways you can take, all with checkpoints. As a runner, you get your hand stamped every time you pass a checkpoint, maybe with a star, smiley face, lightning bolt. You get the picture. The starting pistol sounds and you are off, branching left where your friend branches right. Who took the better path? Only time will tell. Let's zoom in. You and your friend meet up in the parking lot after the race to compare stamps. You each have a star, but you have a smiley face and she has a lightning bolt. From this data, you conclude that you must have passed at least one of the same checkpoints along your path. Your friend describes a really rocky terrain, whereas yours was smooth but hilly. Neither path was better, just different, and each was exactly 5 kilometers in length. What in the world does this have to do with evolution? Phylogeny studies the evolutionary history amongst groups of organisms. It tells the story of relatedness, the branches in the road, and the traits, or stamps, accumulated or lost along the way.
Same old story all over again.
Much like the 5K, organisms can start at the same evolutionary marker and diverge along different paths. And with this information, we construct phylogenetic trees. But how do we know which organisms are related?
Let's work out how to do it.
Oftentimes, character tables are used to construct phylogenetic trees or branching diagrams. Characteristics, like the vertebral column, might separate the outgroup of lancelets from other vertebrates, whereas a hinged jaw excludes the lamprey. It should be noted that a diagram can only infer relatedness based upon available data, organisms, characteristics, to the specific example at hand. Add in a new organism or another characteristic, and the phylogenetic tree would likely be modified. For this reason, phylogenetic trees represent hypotheses and are continuously being revised. Molecular data, like DNA and protein similarities, cytochrome C, sound familiar?
Yes.
Provides more reliable and accurate evidence than physical similarities, living or fossil evidence, when constructing phylogenetic trees.
If you were to find yourself faced with the opportunity to hunt for buried treasure, and you had the option of either A, going on that treasure hunt with an experienced adventurer and access to the treasure map, or 2, winging it and just figure it out as you go. Now, winging it is admittedly very exciting, but the phrase, "I'll figure it out as I go," is usually the last thing I say before getting very lost or spending hours digging through the trash for the furniture assembly instructions I said I didn't need. An experienced adventurer and access to the treasure map is probably the smartest option. Now swap out the word treasure map with study guide, adventurer with teacher, and buried treasure with educational aspirations, and I don't know where I was going with that. But what I do know is that we have study guides, virtual classrooms, and tutoring sessions available now at www.TheApsoluteRecap.com. Now back to the recap.
You will be expected to explain how a phylogenetic tree can be used to infer evolutionary relatedness.
How do you explain this?
Phylogenetic trees show ancestral relationships, with the branching point or node of separation representing the most recent common ancestor. Organisms adjacent and connected to the same node are often called sister taxa. Do not fall in this trap. Just because two organisms are physically adjacent on a diagram does not mean they are more closely related. Follow the lines back to a node. Where to connect, you have a common ancestor, shared derived characteristics, and relatedness. Imagine that this node is a pivot point, which can swivel and cause the organisms on top of it to swap places. For this reason, if organism A and B are connected to a node together, and going further back, they are connected to organism C, I cannot say that B is more closely related to C than A is. Even if it is physically adjacent on the diagram labels, the node could swivel, causing A to be physically closer to C, which is more of a diagramming labeling personal preference and not a hint at evolutionary relationships. What I can conclude is that speciation has occurred, with A, B, and C each on separate paths. Time for unit connections. Small connection to Unit 5, heredity, and Unit 1, the chemistry of life. The more related two species are, the greater their molecular overlap should be. All right, what about the exam? Make them, use them, interpret them, get cozy with phylogenetic trees. Study them from all angles, with the ancestral root organism facing left, right, down, and up. And don't just look at animal examples. There are 3 whole domains to pay attention to. When the AP Bio curriculum went through revision for 2020 exams, many people were upset. Okay, well, let's say many teachers were upset that a lot of biodiversity and body systems were removed. But remember, the College Board can ask you about anything if they give you enough background information. Phylogenetic analysis is a great example of that. To recap, phylogenetic trees show the evolutionary relatedness between organisms. Constructed from molecular and morphological data, organisms are placed on branches connected by nodes. Organisms are more closely related if they share a recent common ancestor. Coming up next on the Absolute Recap Biology Edition, Common Ancestry. Today's question of the day is about change. Ernst Haeckel coined the phrase, ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. What is ontogeny? For the answer to the question of the day, please follow us on Instagram at TheApsoluteRecap. That's the APsolute recap. Check out our website, TheApsoluteRecap.com, for episode schedules, study guides, virtual tutoring, and to sign up for our virtual classroom. The Absolute Recap is produced by Brad Kingett with music by Zach Caruso. Today's episode was written by me, Melanie Kingett. Thanks for subscribing, and don't forget to rate and review wherever you get podcasts. Time's up. Pencils down. Thank you for listening to the Absolute Recap Biology Edition. AP is a registered trademark of the College Board. Copyright 2020, Absolute Recap LLC, all rights reserved.